We're talking with Doyle with State Representative Doyle Heffley. As always, the indomitable Hunter Kipe and the disembodied voice of producer Chuck on the ones and twos. Representative Heffley, what are we talking about today?
Well, first off, I want to say it's good to be back. It's been a couple weeks since we did our last podcast, and now that we're back in session has started. We got our committee assignments and get the ball rolling here in Harrisburg, so to speak.
And you're chairman again of the House Human Services Committee for this legislative session.
Yes, this is my second term chairing the Human Service Committee for the Republican Caucus, and a lot of people had asked me, why?
How did you get started with that?
So my first term in office, I was appointed the Human Service Committee, Transportation Committee, Tourism Committee. Serving on those committees, at that point, the Human Services Committee, why would I be appointed to that? I worked in the transportation industry and trucking. That was most of my background in management coming into the House. And then when you're in the House here, you dive into a lot of different issues. And I found human services to be really compelling. At the time, we were in the midst of the opioid epidemic, and we worked on legislation to create the opioid task force to really combat the overprescribing of opioids, and now they're making movies about what happened in that time frame, and there's the opioid settlement and all those dollars. And we've talked about that in several different podcasts. But so I've stayed with the Human Service Committee, and the Human Service Committee kind of deals with three main topics, but they're really in depth. So you deal with substance use disorders, and that's any kind of addiction issues, treatments, and we deal with intellectual disabilities. And that's really a big part of what we do is helping people get access to the services that they need. And we also deal with behavioral health, which we're hearing more and more talk about mental health. So as a conservative, right, you think, wow, when you think about human services, you don't think conservatism, right? You don't think, but we really want to make sure that the tax dollars that are appropriated to these services are going to go to the individuals that need that care, that level of care, and make sure that there's access to that level of care in the community for them. And I think that's, if you talk to people, whether Republican, Democrat, conservative, or liberal, but, I think it's a conservative thing to say that we're going to take care of people who have a certain level of need, right? And if somebody has an intellectual disability, people would say, I don't mind my tax dollars going to help those individuals, but I want to make sure they're going to help those individuals. I've authored legislation in the past to crack down on welfare fraud and abuse. I voted for a bill that would require a photo ID on an EBT card. And now you see more and more scams going on with those cards and money being diverted. People are losing their SNAP benefits because people are accessing those accounts. So, things like that. So I think you can take a conservative approach. While at the same time, we look at substance use disorder. We want to make sure that the people are getting the treatment that they need. And if they're getting into the criminal justice system, we take that opportunity and we have diversionary courts and get them into like a drug court or a mental health court where they're going to, not just serve their time, because I'm not soft on crime. So I think, serving their time or diverting them into a program where they're going to get their help. If they serve 1 or 2 years in a prison and they come back out and they still are in active addiction, they're going to go right into the same lifestyle. So taking those opportunities, I think that's what taxpayers want. They want to make sure that we're spending that money wisely, but at the same time not creating new programs and wasting money, as we've seen last session with the Democratic majority in the House was passing a new program every week. And I think we need to look at the programs that we have, make sure they're funded properly, and make sure there's accountability in them. And that's what I look to do as the chairman of the committee.
Well, one of the programs that you really prioritize too is after school programs. And aren't you chairman of the After School Caucus? Is that what?
Yes,
the correct title?
I co-chair with Democratic member Liz Fiedler from Philadelphia. So the Shine After School program has just really been a great program, and a lot of people take advantage of that in Carbon County. It's not mandatory, but it's an option, and they coordinate with the community college, so they have folks come in if those students maybe need help with their homework. They do their homework, and it really the turnaround in getting those kids to be better in the classroom, better grades in school, and a higher graduation rate, and that's what the Shine programs are really all about. So last year we traveled to Philly, to Altoona, all across the state, looking at different after-school programs and how we can make sure that they're quality programs. And that's not big government, but it's actually a program that's going to help students and prepare them better for their future.
No, for sure. That's great. And then today, you met with your other committee members and you held a joint hearing with the insurance committee. Mm-hmm. And you talked about brain injury. You heard testimony from a panel that talked about brain injuries for people in Pennsylvania. What else did you discuss today in that hearing?
So today we had our first hearing in this session, and I want to commend my chair, the majority chair, Dan Williams from Chester County. It was a very well-run meeting, and we looked at TBI, traumatic brain injuries, and it's kind of a different. So if you look at somebody with the intellectual disabilities or behavioral health, and these are folks with a brain injury that had a traumatic experience, whether it was an accident, a fall, it would have been an automobile accident, a sports athletic accident, or anything where you impact the brain. And how the brain heals is much different. If you break your arm, they set it, you get a cast, and it heals. And like, okay, you're going to be six months of therapy, and then you're going to be able to do this and this. Well, that's not always how it works with a brain injury. And then how those brain injuries are funded, right? How do we fund services? And that's what we're really looking at. How do we, if somebody was in an accident and they have a brain injury and they need certain types of therapy, it could be speech therapy, it could be occupational therapy, or learning how to walk again, anything in that realm, or it could just be memory loss, identifying what that individual needs and then how do they access the services, because there's approximately 500,000 people in Pennsylvania that live with a brain injury, and every year is about 136,000 individuals that are acquire a brain injury. So how do we better provide access to service for those individuals? So it was a really good hearing. We had the insurance committee was there, so we talked to the insurers, we talked to the providers, and really looking at how can we make it easier. So often I get calls in my office of people that are trying to access services, and then we're navigating the system, and I encourage people, if you live in the 122nd district or wherever you live, if you're having an issue with accessing service for anything, whether it be substance use, behavioral health, traumatic brain injury, and you're getting to the end of your rope, call your legislator, call your state representative, talk to their office, and they can a lot of times help you facilitate meetings to navigate the system. That's one of the things that my district office does, and I really want to commend my district office staff. Whether somebody comes in for a rent rebate or looking for services, we do everything that we can to try to help them.
No, definitely. And you even provided a great example in the hearing talking about how you helped a resident back home who had a traumatic brain injury, and you helped him find the resources that he needs to, live.
Yeah. So it's a unique. It's not a unique situation, but it happens a lot. So. If somebody has an injury and they maybe exhaust everything and they get on Medicaid, right? So then now Medicaid is paying for those services. A lot of times those folks, because they're in a position where they can't work, will then qualify for disability. Yeah. And if you get disability, it sometimes bumps your earnings up, and especially if you got a settlement or anything else, it'll bump your earnings up, so then you no longer qualify for medical assistance, for Medicaid, right? And the situation was this individual was scheduled to have some surgeries and got a letter that his Medicaid was being terminated because of his income level, because he just got back pay from disability. So that's an issue that happens quite a bit, and it's something I think we need to address, because the last thing you want to do when somebody's going through that, because the end goal for these individuals is to get the therapy that they need so they can get back to their life, and that's what government wants. But we shouldn't be putting hurdles up. How do we knock down those barriers? So it shouldn't have been affected by that. It should have been a seamless transition. So those are the types of things we need to work on.
No, for sure. And as we enter now with the budget process, what are your goals and what are you urging Governor Shapiro to do in terms of resources and programs related to human services?
Well, I think oftentimes programs like traumatic brain injury, substance use don't always get the attention they need in the budget. And like I said, I think it's not a matter of just throwing dollars at things. Yeah. But when we have reimbursement rates for people that are, home care workers are getting $13 an hour, and they can't fill those positions, and then people that need those services. So making sure that we shouldn't be creating new programs. The governor is always about creating new programs. Let's fund the programs that we have. Yeah. Let's be good fiscal stewards of the dollars that we have to spend. This is not a time we should be raising taxes. This is a time we should be taking the dollars we have and better allocating them. There's always, I always joke and say everybody that comes to my office during budget time, everybody wants more money, right? There's nobody that comes in and says, hey, we want less.
Yeah.
Nobody. Everybody's got a new program, a great idea, but we really need to sort through that and make sure that the individuals who I think society as a whole agrees need certain services, but then also put accountability measures in there. And we really need to go after waste, fraud, and abuse. And I know Senator Argel just passed a package of bills in the Senate. Coming over here, I'd love to see some movement in that in the House to crack down on some of that waste, fraud in the system.